Alrighty, let's do this. Excuse me. So what I want to do in this video is do a quick walkthrough of the main page here on the patch I'm going to call this version 1, and I'm calling it Modulooper because it's a combination of, and I'm going to upload it to patch storage today. So the settings that I'm going to upload it at are going to be the settings we're going to see in this first little pass. Make sure I got nothing in my other looper here. So I turned off pretty much all my effects except for the compression there, and that's just helping keep that signal strong enough while we're doing this. And then of course I've got my back-end processing, which is just limiting compression, EQ, and probably a little bit of reverb. I haven't looked in there in a while, but I think you'll get the idea what this thing sounds like. So you have two effects here. You have a inspired by the Kfield circuitry, shallow water, the Kfield modulator, which is these two rows of controls. So you have 3 rows of controls. The first 2 rows are 6 different controls for the Kfield modulator, shallow water style of modulation. And then this last row here is for the looper part of it. And the looper really is, by the way, this whole effect is stereo in, stereo out. But the whole, the delays is, there's an 8-second and a 16-second on the left. There's an 8-second and a 16-second delay on the right. And they're going through diffusers. So they morph over time. And this was inspired by one of the new factory patches for the new Zoia firmware update called Loophole. And I just kind of pulled the smear elements of the smear portion of that effect out, and that's what you're seeing in this 3rd row. Now there's one other thing to note before we start making noise here. I'm going to start with the Kfield modulator side, and then we'll go into the looper side. And again, I don't want to get too far into the nuts and bolts of it because it'll take forever, but I want to go through each one on the control page here, and I'll try and add a little information onto patch storage too when I upload it. But having said that, make sure I can hear myself here. Having said that, all you have to do is hit the left foot switch to turn on sending signal to the loopers, and then when you're done creating your pad, which effectively it's creating a nice synthy pad, you can turn it off and then play over it with the left foot switch. So that's just a simple thing I wanted to note before we start, because I'm just gonna, so that's turned off for now. We'll get to that after we get through the Kfield modulator. So having said that, here's a quick little playthrough of what it sounds like. All right, so that's how I'm going to upload it with those settings. I think that's a good balance of that. Again, it's a type of lo-fi, but I wouldn't call it a lo-fi setting. It's a broken sound. It's as the people at Fairfield Circuitry describe it as a nostalgic sound. And again, it's naked sound, obviously, whatever effect, normally I would have some delay on there and such, but right now that's just the naked sound, and it's pretty pure, nice and broken. It's behaving a lot like the Shallow Water. I used to own one, but it doesn't have any of that analog annoyance, to be honest. And maybe more relevant is it's well, I guess it's technically dual mono, because just each side is its own discrete signal. So you could call it true stereo or dual mono. But because there's the delay lines are getting modulated in there, it's a really interesting type of modulation. So let's go through the controls. Starting with the top left, you have output gain. So if you're really, it's basically everything's going through a low pass filter that's being driven by an envelope follower. So if you're really going for that low frequency stuff, you might need to boost output. Right now I've got it boosted a little bit just to keep my recording signals good. But again, that's a control you'll probably have to mess with depending on what your settings are. It's the most interactive controls. Like, everyone is entirely dependent on every other one in this one. So this is the kind of thing you're going to be messing with quite a bit. And by the way, so in the rows of controls here, for if you are new to a Zoia, it's just the left three. The right three on any of these, or the right, that's just the connection. So just if you're choosing any of these, you're going to choose the left one out of the two to make your adjustments with the knob. They're all set up to be controlled with a knob. So that one's simple, output gain. We'll go down the line here. Okay, next one down is the filter level. So the reason why I thought it was important to include a filter level here is because if you get a rhythmic thing going, because the filter is being driven by an envelope follower, it can get kind of bouncy sounding maybe. So there may be instances, depending on what the rhythm is in the background, where you need to lower the amount of signal that's being pushed into the envelope follower, and that's what filter level is. That's lowering the amount of information that's getting pushed into the filter. And again, you can hit it as hard as you want. I love jamming in this thing. So the next one down is modulation rate, and that's going to change the speed of the LFO that's driving or that's modulating the delay line that's in there. So right now I want to say, if I'm going to hit the right thing and head over here real quick. I want to say, yeah, I'm at about 29 BPM right now, and that seems to be that kind of... Help if I played in key here. But again, you can make that modulation crazy high, and you get all these kind of weird little almost envelope filter-ish kind of responses out of it. So there's modulation rate. Back up to the center row, the modulation mix. Now this one's important because it'll dramatically change what this effect sounds like while you're playing. So right now, the mix is at maximum, which means that all you're hearing is the signal that's going through the process, the Kfield process, okay? But what you can do is dial this back and bring in some of your direct signal. And you get a really interesting kind of modulation. I don't know if I'd call it a chorus. Maybe it's a randomly modulated vibrato. Maybe it's a chorus. Again, I'm going to refer to it as a Kfield modulator because I think the Shallow Water is really unique in that regards. It isn't quite flanging. It isn't quite a vibrato. It isn't quite a chorus. But in the case of this, and it becomes more important when you're sending signal into the looper, just a little goes a long way. I just dialed it back a few clicks. Now you can dial it way back and mix to taste. Again, notice how much stronger the signal is coming out. That's an instance where you might go over to the white control here and modify the output gain depending on how you have it mixed. And I'm just again dialing out, so now there's no. And then depending on what you have dialed in, you might want to mess with the mix until it's where you want it. I think I'm gonna leave it like this too, because when we get to the looper part, you want to have a little stronger of a signal being sent into that looper to make a nice pad. But that gives you a nice modulation instead of just that broken sound. Okay, next. So this is the low pass filter bass frequency. So again, I'm gonna upload it where I think it sits nicely. Does all kinds of weird things. I love it. And again, you can dial that in, to be in your face. You can dial it in so it's subtle. It's just a real interesting. It's a real interesting way of modulating a signal. It's been a lot of fun to mess with. But you can really take that bass. Now, this is where it's extremely interactive with the filter level. If you take the bass frequency down on the low pass filter, so it's passing more low end through, you'll want to compensate with the amount of signal being sent into the filter, so that filter opens up more readily. So those two are very, very interactive with each other. You'll find yourself messing with all of these controls except for one. I don't mess with the next one, which is the last one, and that's the aliasing intensity. I even went so far to set the minimum at the other end of the connection, so you can't even dial it back that far, because it takes it just out of being the effect I created. And the aliasing really adds aliasing into it, but it's like a distortion type thing. That's where the kind of noise is. Now, notice it's not a noisy effect, thank goodness. That's another one of the annoyances of the shallow water is because it's analog. It does have that mojo, but if you certain settings, it's too much noise coming out of there, not desirable noise in the case of that. So there's your 6 controls. Again, modulation rate and aliasing, I'm finding I don't use much. You'll find a modulation rate that you like, again, unless you're using this effect for a lot of different applications. Hang on, this microphone isn't working for me. Okay, but the aliasing you might mess with if you like making crazy noises. So okay, moving on so that's the modulation side, the Kfield modulation side. The looper side, again, you activate it with the foot switch here. So now, and I have a volume pedal here, but I suppose it doesn't have to be a volume pedal. You can play into it as well. In fact, let's play into it right now. Okay, so let's stay in E. First control is the loop volume. So if you have, for instance, a really frail, broken sounding modulation you're working on, your loop volume might need to be modified so the loop isn't too loud or too quiet for that matter. So loop volume becomes important. Right now I kind of have it in the middle. It's probably fine. Fairly self-explanatory. Loop repeats, okay? Loop repeats will be at full 1, which means that it will constantly cycle, and it won't go into crazy oscillation or anything. But so you typically want to keep it at that. Now you can have it slowly fade. Another thing you want to use this particular control for is when you're done, obviously you don't want that loop going on forever. You can just take this, and again, these are all set up to use the knob. once you selected it, you can just roll it back and fade out the loop that you have in there. We'll do a little demo of that once I get to the end of this description. But you typically keep that at 1, because once you've, again, sent all your information to the loop and your pad has begun to diffuse, you turn the switch off and it will stay going. It'll do its own thing. And again, you can play over it, create other loops in other areas, whatever it might be. So important one, the second one down there. And then third one is going to be the loop delay length. And again, you have on each side, you have an 8-second delay and a 16-second delay. If you want to fine tune those, this is where you can do it. And it's, I mean, you could probably follow the connection to them and then look at exactly what time you're going for. But in the case of this, because they're getting diffused, and you'll hear this in a moment, because they ultimately turn into like a wash in the background, an evolving wash, the delay length probably won't need to be dialed in. You probably just learn how to feed it and then let it do its own thing. So delay length. And then, of course, as I alluded to, the left foot switch is going to turn on or turn off, sending signal to the loop. And that off switch is nice, again, because once you fill that endless loop and it starts diffusing, then you're in a situation where you can play over it. So, all right, let's turn it on and start a little loop. I'm going to mute here till the loop's going. All right, so now in this particular case, typically I would swell these notes in with my volume pedal or with my volume knob, so it's softer in the beginning. But as you'll hear, and we'll let it progress here for a little bit, as you'll hear, so I just turned off sending a signal to it, so I can make all the noise I want now, and it's not going to affect the loop. So now I can just let that loop evolve. And you hear it said a lot in a lot of these pedals, talking about evolving loops. Usually that's just a loose way of saying repeats. I mean, I guess ultimately these things are repeating, but in this case, because they're going through those diffusers and they're at different lengths, they do actually evolve. And if you were to, say, experiment with letting the loops slowly fade as you play into them, you could really genuinely develop some sort of evolving pad if that's what you like doing. Personally, I've set this up to do what I'm about to try and illustrate is, and now again, one thing I like to do here, I'm going to add one more thing. I like adding, I have a pitch shifter here, the Intelligent Harmony Machine. I'll add a low note in there. And I did fade that in with my volume pedal. But again, taking those transients out, it'll meld into more of a synthy sound much quicker than if you didn't. But again, what I like to do here is now I can play, leads over this. almost sounds like a gated fuzz or something. And again, I have the UA Starlight after this, so I would typically have the delay on, so I just add the delay in here. But as you can hear, now it's starting to slowly diffuse, and that creates a lot of opportunity for. Now, in the case of this, I might blend in more of my straight signal instead of the modulated signal for the lead part. But it ends up being a really cool kind of modulation that doesn't really remind you of any other type of modulation. It's the shallow water is pretty cool and unique in that regard. And just to be quiet here for a second, listen to how this pad has evolved. So there you go. There's the basic run through of the control scheme for the Empress Zoia patch. I'm about to upload to patch storage, so it should be available. So it's May 15th. So it should be available within the next hour or two on patch storage. I got to make sure that I have it saved to the SD card the way I want it to, and then upload it and write all the description in there. I don't want to get too crazy. That's why I wanted to make this video. So hopefully this will give you a good idea of what you can do with this thing if you have a Zoia and you download it and you just want to just jump right in and start messing with it. I think I've covered everything you need to know. I try to make just the control page here simple, because when it comes to, so this is page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I ended up with 8 pages of information in here. I don't need to get into all that crap. Just the control page, it behaves as I wanted it to. Obviously, anybody who's got a Zoia is into doing their own thing, so hopefully there's ideas in there for you to maybe pull. But in my mind, this started with the Kfield modulator, and I really think I've got the essence of what the Kfield modulator is. It's not a lo-fi thing, it's a Kfield modulator thing. So I think I've kind of captured that a little bit with this. And then again, one thing I wanted to illustrate, okay, so I'm done jamming, right? So I've turned off the input, there's no input there, the light's off. If I go up to repeats, loop repeats, and I just roll back the repeats, it should cycle through. Keep that in mind too, you do have a couple 16-second loops going, so it may take as long as 16 seconds for the loops to cease, but there you go. Pretty happy with this one, the Modulooper. I'm pretty happy with this. There's some things going on here that are actually a little beyond my skill. I had to challenge myself to make this, and that's kind of why I'm excited to upload this. It turned out pretty good. I've had this Zoia, for a few years now, and I still feel like I haven't even touched the surface on it. So hopefully you have some fun with this, because that's kind of the point, right? Have some fun. But until next time, thank you.